welcome to yet another exciting edition of the 2021 HiFL Masterclass series. Yes, leveraging data and technical analysis cannot be overemphasized in football. Today, we are excited to join yet again a sport tech expert all the way from East Africa in the beautiful city of Kenya, Mr. Rogito Nyangeri, as he will be leading the discussion on the topic, Big Data in Football, Combining Data Sources for the Bigger Picture. He is the Director of ITB Strategies, Kenya, a globally renowned sports tech platform, and is also a social entrepreneur. It's our pleasure at HiFL to have you speak to us this afternoon, sir. On behalf of our participants from across Africa, Nigeria, and the world, we welcome you to the third edition of the HiFL Masterclass series. I'm your regular host, Akwe Michael Nguto, and today's edition of the Masterclass has been divided into two segments. We will have our facilitator, Mr. Nyangeri, take us through this presentation for 25 to 30 minutes, and we will be taking questions from participants afterwards to shed more light and further transverse the topic before us for another 30 minutes. We encourage participants at this juncture to send in their questions while the presentation is ongoing, as those questions will be collated and shared with Mr. Nyangeri for adequate responses. I'll hand over our esteemed facilitator, Mr. Rogito Nyangeri, to the audience now so he could make his presentation. We are going to be having a PowerPoint presentation from our facilitator, and that presentation is going to be short and precise, so we encourage everyone to pay attention as there's a lot to learn and there's a lot of knowledge to also harness from this presentation. So it's over to you, Mr. Nyangeri.
Thank you, Michael. Thanks a ton. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. I hope you can hear me clearly. Greetings to everyone from,
yes, of course.
Greetings from Nairobi. We're on the far end of the continent. I also like to thank the HiFL team for putting this together. I know the audience has had PowerPoint and they're like rolling their eyes. Don't worry, this is not a PowerPoint you get in class. This is way different. So if you allow me, Michael, I'll just share my screen here.
Yes, very well.
I need you to enable me to actually share.
Okay, so you're enabled to share.
Thank you. So as promised, I'll keep it short and I'll keep it sweet and precise. I hope everyone can see my screen. Today's agenda is big data in football, combining various data sources to form the bigger picture. So I'll do it in 3 steps. Michael, you've already touched on part 1, who ITB are, what we do. I'll jump into part 2. I'll just talk about big data. It sounds like Greek when people tell you about big data. I mean, the obvious question would be, is there small data, right? I want to show you that all data is big data. And then finally, I'm going to talk about the opportunities that the big data opportunity presents to students, not only in Niger, but across Africa as a whole. So this is a team. This is not me normally. I'm not normally in suits. I'm more in track suits on the field, scouting talent in Kenya. Our team has a CTO called Peter. This is our tech guru. We have Charlotte, who's my co-founder, who's currently based in Switzerland doing there's a FIFA Masters program. Omar, I think, is scheduled to also participate in this program later on if he's not participated already. Correct me if I'm wrong, Michael. And finally, we have Philip. Philip is the guru of compliance and governance issues in East Africa. So ITB provides a wide range of services. First and foremost, we digitize football clubs in Africa. As you know, many clubs are offline. If you say, for example, you want to see the website of a club that is somewhere on the Delta, it is very hard to actually find our website, find out where these guys are. So digitization really is for us to bring more African clubs online, connect them not only with their fans, but potential sponsors. We provide what's called management as a service. This is really helping clubs manage their affairs better. We all know stories of people receiving money from sponsors, and then instead of the cash being invested in the club, you find the club chairman has bought a new Ferrari and he's moved to Victoria Island, he's completely misused the money. Yeah? We have legal advisory. Yeah. This is for the players, really talking about their contracts, ensuring their stuff that is solid with their clubs, not only in East Africa, but when they do transfers outside the continent, be it the Middle East or Europe. We provide financial services. This is to really help the players when you're receiving your cash, you're receiving your salary. We don't want you to spend all that money gambling. You don't want to bet, we can put you, get a house, take care of your folks who are up country. If you're living in Lagos, but you're from Abuja, send some money home, we ensure that happens via our service. Talent management, this is really to identify young talent around East Africa. So we're talking guys who are from, say, 14 years old to 21, connecting them to clubs both locally, regionally, and internationally. And then there's a small element of scholarships now, connecting brilliant students with sports scholarships, more often in the US than in Europe. So I'll jump in. So the question is, just to demystify all this, big data is not some magic thing that is like Bitcoin or crypto, something you can never understand. It's very simple. So big data really is any sort of data that you can put together and analyze and come to a decision or reach a conclusion. So this data can range from the number of shots a particular player has made per game for an entire season or for the last 5 seasons. It tells you a lot about the activity of the player, how dangerous or not the player is, how effective or not the player is. Just to give you an example about the quantity of data that is involved in football. There was a study done at the end of the 1920 season around the English Premier League, and it was discovered that every single game produces 1.4 million unique data sets, 1.4 million points. Now imagine in a weekend where all teams are playing, then multiply that by the 38 game weeks that actually exist. We are looking at 1.4 million data points in 380 games in the UK alone. Add France, add Germany, add Nigeria, add Ghana, add Kenya. Suddenly you see the volume of data that actually sits out there. So this is a big data, is how we can accumulate all this information that sits out there from the various leagues, put them together into a single box or database, and analyze it simply to understand what is all this information all about and what is it actually communicating. So I sort of alluded to this. Data in itself is not of value unless we do some analytics to it, right? We could find that in this game, there were 400 shots made or 600 shots, but who made the shots? And were the shots on target or the shots towards the dressing room? Or, some analytics need to be done around the data that we receive. Then from this particular piece of analytics that we do, we get a conclusion. There's a decision that we made based on the analytics. So there's an entire value chain that is actually involved with data. There are people who will sit in silo 1, just gathering data from wherever it is, whether you're seated in a stadium in Lagos, whether you're seated in Yaoundé, whether you're seated in London. There's raw data that you're gathering, but then this data is fed somewhere where it is analyzed, and the analyzed data is fed to a third party who makes a decision based on this data. In the latter part of this presentation, I'll show you how all this actually comes together with a real practical example. So there are 6 characteristics of data. For those in the audience today who maybe have studied computer science or done statistics or bits of machine learning in school, you'll have been told about 3 characteristics of data. That's volume, the amount of data that you're actually getting. Variety, how is this data? Has it been organized? Is it ad hoc? Is there some semblance of order being made? That's what you call structured, semi-structured, unstructured. And how fast you're actually receiving the data. Velocity is very interesting when you think about entertaining games. I have a personal bias. I'm a Leeds United fan. Sorry, everyone out there. And when you watch Leeds play, it's very exciting. It's end-to-end action, right? So you see on one end, Calvin Phillips has shot. They've turned over the ball. Chelsea has attacked. Kai Havertz has missed. Timo Werner has missed for Chelsea. Lots of data is being generated every single time. So this is what we're talking about, velocity. Veracity refers to how reliable is this data. A good example is this. HiFL is running a league. So you find Goodness and Shola, they put all their statistics together. They tell you that at the moment, the Royals are leading the table. That's according to HiFL. They're telling that the Royals or even the Lions are leading the table. But at the same time, there's a guy running a shop in some random place. I don't know, Gao. Is it called Gao? So there's a guy out there and he tells you, this is the official data for the HiFL. Who would you believe between the HiFL team, that's Goodness and Shola, or the guy who's seated out in the village somewhere? Veracity talks about how reliable is the data that you've received. Of course, from the reliability, the amount of data that you receive, you can create value of this data. You can packet it and package it and sell it to a third party. And then data can be used in various ways, and it can also be packaged in various ways. You can find data that is sent to you, say, via a live app. If you're watching, say, European football, there's some apps which give you alerts every time a goal goes in. There are some other platforms where this data, you're actually receiving it as audio. So there's variability, there's change and difference in how this data is actually placed together and communicated. So I have categorized all the data that I think exists in football into these 4 main categories. I don't think it's exhaustive, but I think this is one that actually makes sense. The first one is around GPS tracking. Any one of you who watches European football will have seen the aspect on the bottom left with the heat map where Ronaldo is. So this essentially are cameras. These are cameras in the stadium just tracking the activity of a particular player. Areas of intense activity where this guy has been most active, usually he's making passes, making tackles, all that shows as red. That's a hot area. Areas of minimal activity, he's sauntering around, is a yellow, and then where the player has done nothing completely is your bold green. So in this particular example, if you look at the top left of the screen of Ronaldo's right shoulder, you can see a lot of green space. It tells us that this guy is not doing anything around the corner flag. This is pure data that has been extracted from GPS tracking of Ronaldo's movements. Our second item is wearables on the extreme right. I'm sure most of you have seen this either when clubs are in training, just before kickoff of a game, or when a player is substituted and they remove their shirt, you see they're wearing something underneath the jersey. It's not a bra, it's a wearable. Essentially, it tracks a lot of biometric data about the player, and it works in conjunction with the GPS tracking. The third category is data that comes from the stadia itself. So there are lots of stadia out there that are quote unquote smart. So you get into the stadia with your phone, there's a Wi-Fi network, you are a firm supporter of say Real Madrid. I hate the team, but it's just for this example. So you're a firm supporter of Real Madrid, you check in with your phone and the phone says, hey, Michael, welcome. It's been 7 days since we saw you. Would you like some popcorn again? You know? So the app sort of knows information about you, and you're connected to the stadia. So there's a lot of data that comes off that. This helps sponsors, especially. They know that Michael is addicted to popcorn. So they will ensure that if he gets into the stadia, an advert will be pushed to him. There are other individuals, for example, who would love a hot dog, for example. Same thing, same logic happens. You made an order before, it's stored in the phone, it's connected to the stadia, you come back, it prompts. So it enables the people who, the companies and the people who actually sponsor football to actually make money off the funds when they're in the stadium. The final one is a boring one. It's the traditional data that you get. I mean, all of you are soccer fans, or sorry for saying soccer, football fans, are actually familiar with this one. This is it. This is your traditional data. You're looking at your logs. You know how many goals are scored, how many they conceded. But what is interesting is a bit of value add has been done to this log. When we were growing up, there was nothing like the last five. If you look at the extreme right of the Premier League standings, we have the last five, the balls there. In our days, it wasn't there. But this one tells you about form. So it shows how you're taking the traditional data of Man City has played, Leicester has played, but then we're doing a value to understand what is their form. This is quite intriguing in that Liverpool, so this is at the end of this particular season, Liverpool were on a 5-game winning streak. They hit a hot streak, which makes you think, what if they had started playing this way when there were 15 games to go? What will have happened? Will United have been where they finished as second in the league? If a team like Leicester, for example, had a better track record in the last 5 games, would they actually have qualified for the Champions League instead of the Europa League? Yeah, instead of the Europa League that they've qualified for. On the right side, this is a second level of traditional data. This came off the Coppa Italia final that was played last week between Atalanta and Juve. When you look at data in a very raw format, you'll see things like this. And I'd like to point you all to these 3 rows here. You'll see that Atalanta had 58%, majority of the possession in the game. They made most passes in the game. Pass accuracy was very high. But in the end, they still lost the game. This will lie to you, right? For example, the passes aspect. If you don't do analytics, you think, wow, these guys did 536. How come they didn't do well in this game? Well, if you do a little bit more of digging on this, you'll find that many of the passes were backwards. You're not going towards attacking Juve. So Juve took they made fewer passes. The accuracy was less, but they were clinical. They took 14 shots on goal. 6 of them were on target, nearly 50%. Look at this other team for Atalanta. 11 shots, 4. It's like 33%. So it shows you something. It's not possession will not always make you win. The number of passes will not always make you win. It all boils down to this. So if you take raw data, this is big data. If you take it without analytics, it might completely lie to you. Since when you say, oh, we passed, we played well, you are passing the goalkeeper throughout. That's not how football is played. Take you to the next one. A personal favorite of mine, son of Niger. Whenever I see Chukwueze playing against my favorite Spanish team, Barcelona, I shake. Because this man has speed, he can dribble, I fear. But we're talking about big data, so let's look at Chukwueze's stats over the last 2 odd years. So this is off a site called whoscored.com. Obviously, the bio data around Chukwueze, his age, of course, where he's from. But then if we just look at the data itself, some very interesting things. Chukwueze guarantees you every single season, he's going to have a killer game. See here, man of the match. Every single thing he's played, whether it's in Europa League, whether it's in La Liga, he's going to turn in a man of the match performance, guaranteed. calls into question, does he put everything into one game, then lag off on the rest of the 37? There's an issue about consistency there. He's great around passing. His passing has been very, very consistent in all competitions over the years. But a number of things are weird. For example, if you look at the aerial duels won, so the column, this particular column, he improved. So, 18-19, he was here. He went drastically down when he was playing in La Liga. It went up, but then it's gone down. So, Chukwueze is not great in the air, right? If you just look at this data, it tells you a lot. He's not great in the air, but he's a great passer of the ball. So you'd rather play with him, passes on the ground. It works well for Villarreal. Hence, when Chukwueze receives a ball versus Barcelona, that's why I shake. Because I know these particular statistics around him, while our players in Barcelona are quite slow. So we've talked about big data. You're gathering data, there are various data points to get it. I have slightly jumped into the analysis of data when I was taking you through the Atalanta and Juve example or Chukwueze's example. But this is the thing, the second bit about handling all this data is you need to categorize it, you need to analyze it. Try to find some sense out of all this information that is coming in. On the right side is a personal favorite of mine, Marcelo Bielsa. Bielsa has been the coach for Athletic Bilbao. He's managed Albiceleste, the Argentine national team. He's been the coach, he's the current coach for Leeds United. And Bielsa is widely known as the most analytical coach in world football. Pep Guardiola, Mourinho, Pochettino, all of them agree that this guy is just on another level in terms of analysis. He sits down and analyzes 1,000 videotapes or 1,000 discs, of games. This used to work well before the age of speedy machines, semiconductors, and microchips. What Bielsa takes weeks and weeks to actually do is now done in a matter of minutes by machines. When I talk here about analysis of data, that's why I've put in this particular word, algorithms. Algos are just smart formulae that trudge through the data that you've put together and categorized and try to find some sense out of it. So once algos are put in place, you have all this information, it is analyzed. This information goes to the coaches. So fellows like Bielsa will actually look at the outcome. The trainers, the physical trainers in the team, we look at how a player is actually moving. Is he limping? Is he putting more pressure on the left leg rather than the right, which tells you maybe there's an ankle or knee injury that is there. And then most importantly, you use the same analytics on your opponent. So you take a video, you're sitting down, you're like, you know what, we know we are going into the final. So this is, say, Pep Guardiola, so you're going to play Chelsea in this in the Champions League final. Let me do analytics on Chelsea. Some things you can see. For example, all the passes will go at one point or the other through N'Golo Kante. So you make a strategic decision. I am going to put a monster next to N'Golo Kante to break down how Chelsea actually plays and makes its particular passes. That is just an example. So there's a fusion. There's a fusion between what I've just talked about, big data. So collecting all this data, putting it somewhere, and trying to analyze it. Now, the analysis of this data has created a new science by itself, a new vocation called data science. So you'll find there are many data science courses being brought on board. There could be some in Niger, but you'll see a lot of them happening in Europe. Even Kenyan universities now are doing data science. This is about the interpretation of all the data that you have. Once you do all this data, you've organized, you interpreted the data, whoever is going to use it needs to be able to discover it very quickly. That is called data discovery. So the three work together. Get all this big data, apply data science to it, and then avail the data in a very easy way so it's easily discovered by the end user. So the graph on the right actually shows that the opportunity going forward right, is around big data discovery. Traditional analytics, this is what Bielsa does. You're limited in time, you know, you can't process volume. You'll say, I can only do 5 or 6 videotapes or discs this particular weekend. But then when you put in algorithms and machines, suddenly you can analyze a whole amount of data. This is where the Germans have actually excelled, and I'll show you this later on in this presentation. So there are a number of data tools out there that are used for processing, Apache Spark, Apache Pig, Hive. I'll not go into that, that's very technical, but this for any of you who's actually interested, you can actually take your time, just Google and look these solutions up. They're great for doing the analytics bit of the business. So a good illustration of getting data, analyzing it, and drawing conclusions. Hello? Someone's mic is on. I don't know if you can mute that. Yeah, thank you. So a good example is this. Marcelo, Brazilian defender for Real Madrid. Many years, he was a stalwart of the team. I think he was vice captain. But then in the last season, Zidane has benched him a lot. So analytics was done. And this was a weird thing that came out, that every time Marcelo played for Real Madrid, they lost. So the coaching staff were like, hey, come on. Oh, there's a dynamic changing whenever Marcelo is in the team. So Marcelo was benched. This changed the performance of the team, and Real eventually finished second in the just concluded La Liga season. A second one was a study done by Squawka around Europe about which players have created the most chances in Europe. KDB or Man City, Kevin De Bruyne was top in terms of the number of chances that he created. When this study came out, it actually helped De Bruyne negotiate a fatter salary and a better contract with Man City, just based on this kind of data that has been collected. So the last bit, we've talked about what is big data, why you're collecting it. We've talked about the analytics around big data. Now in the end, we are making decisions. We've slightly touched on it in the previous slide where we saw Zidane decided not to field Marcelo because every time he played, they lost. But we can go deeper into this, right? What advantages do you draw? Football is moving from the old way where it was the gut, you know? You find, say, the late Stephen Keshi saying, you know what, I want to play with, say, Obafemi Martins, or I feel that John Obi Mikel should be the striker today. It's moving away from that to hard data. Why should we play a particular player rather than the other one? It's just based on numbers rather than the gut feeling of the coach or the trainers. I'd like to share 4 case studies here quickly. I know I'm running out of time for the presentation. One, Kevin De Bruyne recently negotiated a new contract with Man City. You saw the previous study from Squawka where it said KDB had produced the most chances in European football. So KDB used this and hired a company called TransferLab to actually show that whenever he played for Man City, they had more shots on goal, they actually scored more goals and won more games. Just because of this, he was able to, I think, negotiate a salary of about £375,000 a week. I think it's the most lucrative now in European football. And what's interesting, he did not even use an agent. He just told the TransferLab guys, look at my performance, look at all this data, analyze, let me go and present to the bosses in Man City. Data drove his contract. Now he's the most well-paid player in English football. Second one, I'm sure some of you were not too young to remember the World Cup in 2014, where Brazil and Germany met in the semis. And the Germans destroyed Brazil 7-1. The Brazilians started crying, right? It wasn't that Germany were just good on the day, it's that the assistant manager for Die Mannschaft, the German team, Hansi Flick, had taken 2 years worth of data on Brazil. He realized, he looked at all their formations, how they play without Neymar, how they play when a certain defender is injured, and figured out all possible options that Brazil could play. So when they got into this game, Brazil were already disadvantaged. The data and data analytics made Germany win the 2014 World Cup. Liverpool, for those of you in the audience who are Liverpool fans who don't want to walk alone. Liverpool has done a lot of data analytics, and theirs is about getting players. So in a nutshell, Liverpool has spent about £415 million putting together the team that eventually won the Champions League, right? So buying Van Dijk, putting in Mo Salah, bringing in Sadio Mane, all these players. But then right now, their current market value is 700 million sterling. They used analytics, identified players who they thought were undervalued, brought them into the team. They not only delivered the Champions League, but as assets, as players, their value has gone up by over 200 million sterling. Finally, there was a case of AC Milan. AC Milan was great in Europe in the 90s and the mid 2000s. What Milan did was they created a lab that will simply focus on analyzing the feet of their players. So thighs, knees, and ankles of their players. And the sort of data they got and the interventions they were able to do made Milan a dominant side. Milan actually won the European Cup multiple times in the 90s, even in the 2000s. But the last time they won, I think they had the oldest squad ever. The average age was above 30. This normally doesn't happen. You find teams that win games have an average age of 24, 25, but Milan was the oldest, simply because of the use of analytics in sports fitness and sports healthcare. So the other uses that I'll not go into, the use of analytics around sports betting. This is what creates the odds in the matches. There's product marketing. I touched on this earlier. You know, when a guy comes into the stadium, what he often orders, what he likes. So you push that product to him. And this is also tied to the fan experience. Finally, what are the opportunities? So this is an extract by a study done by Labtrin a couple of months ago, and shows that the market value for big data is increasing in football. So backward looking from 2011 and forward looking towards 2027. Big data as a whole, there's more and more data coming in. The more data you get, the more analytics you do on it, the more value you can actually derive. So for those of you in the audience today thinking, I cannot be the next Obafemi, I cannot be Nwankwo Kanu, you cannot be Peter Rufai, right? There's still a role for you in football. You can either work on doing the first side of big data, which is aggregating all this data. You are with the HiFL, you're on the ground, you're watching games, Tigers are playing, the Lions or the Warriors. You're there on the ground, you're gathering data, which player made number of shots, how many goals were scored. That's the first bit of actually getting big data. There are some of you who are brilliant in analytics. So the data that is brought in by a colleague is analyzed by yourselves. And then some of you could end up as coaches as well for the teams. So big data is also relevant to the coaches and the trainers. It's not something that is just up in the air, because once you get this data and understand it, you become like Hansi Flick. You're able to look at raw numbers, make sense out of it, and you destroy Brazil 7-1. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Nyangeri. That was a beautiful presentation. I personally enjoyed it, and I'm sure the rest of the participants also enjoyed it. I think it's always interesting when you're listening to a master. Learning at the feet of a master is always something very interesting. A lot of us took out time to actually try to look at what data was and its importance for football. But with the presentation you've done now, it looks like, all of that research has gone to waste, because you've given us the masterpiece, and we really appreciate you for that.
You're welcome. This is my life every day.
So looking at collegiate football and the fact that it actually is around young people, you try to talk about some opportunities around data gathering, interpretation, and how it helps the game. And then looking at HiFL, we actually have a group of young people on the HiFL structure called team handlers. They are actually responsible for creating visibility for the game. So every team playing in the higher institutions football league actually has a handler, and the handler tweets the games when they are going on. They're able to tell you how many goals were scored, which players scored those goals. So we're doing a little bit of data gathering here.
You have your data guy, yes.
Yeah. So we have some good data guys here, and I think most of them are listening to you and they are learning a couple of things. So there are some questions that were sent through here. There were a couple of technical words you used that I think some of our participants didn't understand. Somebody wants to actually know what the meaning of data point is, and beyond that, somebody also wants to know really gathering all of this data, like you said, is actually a lot of work. But data analytics in itself is what seems to change the game. So looking at sports, which would you pay more attention to? Data gathering or analytics? Vis-a-vis, which is better?
Fantastic
which should be more invested in?
Fantastic question. So data point. Wow, I spoke Greek. I try to avoid Greek as much as possible. So data point is simply this, something you want to measure in football, right? So if you're looking at a game, it's a Super Eagles versus the Lions from Cameroon, right? You want to know how many passes have the Super Eagles made. So you count. Those are data points. You want to know how many yellow cards have been issued in the game, how many red cards. Those are data points. It's the kind of stuff you see. You remember the table I illustrated before, the traditional, like this is a number of games that have been played. Then there was a second one for Atalanta Juve. Those are the data points. I hope I've answered the lady or gentleman who asked that particular question for data points.
Yes, I can see a hand up, so I think that's answered.
Okay, fantastic. Now, gathering data is work. Yes, it is the toughest bit of this entire thing, because you cannot do analytics on nothing, right? The whole ecosystem is very valuable. Now, I'm going to give sort of a very cheeky answer to this one. You better do both the gathering and analytics. That's where you win. So you form like, I don't know, Michael Nigeria Analysts Limited, right? And you have one section that actually just goes out to collect data, but in-house, you have another section that analyzes, because the analysis is a value add. It's what is bought. People rarely buy the raw data, they buy the value add. So if you put the two together, that's where you win. That's what I'm saying. It's a cheeky answer. It's very hard for someone to say, I'm just going to do data gathering. If you do that, you're not going to make a living out of football. You need to take it to the next level. I hope I've answered the question.
Yes, of course. So talking about ITB strategies, I was looking at your website and I saw something around your vision. And it was quoted to say that ITB Strategies is the first digital platform across the globe to offer an end-to-end solution for talent evaluation, monetization, and management. How has this come to actually be on the company's vision, which is to unlock the vast economic potentials in sports, and in the process provide employment to millions of Africa's youth over the years? Because we're looking at the continent with the highest population of youth in the world. We're looking at most of these youth being involved in sports. We're talking collegiate sports here. We're looking at the opportunities you've been able to create so far, and what are the other options we have, particularly now that we're getting involved with you.
Fantastic question. So the thing is this. One thing we realized when we started ITB, even before I go into that, I'm a failed footballer, right? I used to think of myself as Maradona when I was playing, right? And there I am 16, I am 17, I'm having these grand dreams of playing football professionally. Then I hurt my ankle, right? Then my father tells me, forget it, son, you're not going to be Maradona, go hit the books, okay? So That's why I took a tangent from actually playing professional football. Now, to bring this home, there are many Africans, be it from Morocco to South Africa, Senegal to Djibouti, who have lots of raw talent. They are talented. They can dribble better than anyone else. He's the best keeper, right, you've ever seen. But the thing is, they lack one, the connection to an opportunity that will actually make them earn money off the sport. That's one. Two, when they think they have a connection, many times the fellows who do this are conmen. This is a very big problem, especially in West Africa. Someone comes in and claims, you know what, I'm going to give you a trial with Southampton. I'm going to take you to Manchester United, you know. They lack access. When someone claims is going to give you access, it's a con. And then on the other side, there are individuals who think that playing football is a be-all and end-all. Like if I don't just become a player, I've completely failed. So what we've done with ITB is to do this. We've decided to tackle all of them at the same time because it's a big problem.
Wow.
Now,
wow.
if I work in reverse, we speak to students, both collegiate in Kenya and guys who just finished and they're thinking, so they've graduated, they have their degrees and they're thinking about what next. So we speak to these guys and tell them, listen, you don't have to be a footballer. You don't have to be in the center field orchestrating moves, pulling strings. You can go into coaching. You can go into management of a club that you love, right? So this has changed the economic reality for both current and ex-footballers. So current footballers know, yes, I can play. When I retire, there's something I can go into. I can start getting my coaching badges now. That's the sort of guidance we give. There's a retired player who's sitting at home, like, oh, the government doesn't love me. I used to be a superstar. I am broke, you know? They're like, listen, you have all this talent. Let's connect you to a club that is in the lower tier. This club has money. They are funded by non-governmental organizations. They have donors who are keen on seeing something succeed, but the club simply doesn't have a coach. We do that linkage. That solves that. Now, much as we have the largest youth population in Africa, we also struggle with the largest level of unemployment per capita. Like so many people are unemployed. The sports are completely neglected. Aside from Morocco or Tunisia, maybe South Africa, and I say maybe with a pinch of salt in South Africa, sports are neglected the rest of the countries. It's something you just do. Oh yeah, you're seen on Saturday, you scored a goal, but then your club doesn't pay you a salary. Your medical is not covered. You're like, this should not be the reality for the player. You're good. Don't limit yourself to playing in a country that does not pay you. So with ITB, we open economic opportunities for the player. We will link you to proven clubs out there that, sorry, something has just popped up. Proven clubs that actually need players like yourself, right? Okay, another aspect, something else that we should not ignore. There could be people online today. So you love football, but you are in medical school. So you're in university, you're playing in the league, but you're studying to be a doctor, right? Going that path, that doesn't mean that you will never ever deal with football. You could become the doctor for the Super Eagles, right? You could go, you travel to Namibia. You become the coach, the sports doctor for the national team. So there are various routes that actually open. So in short, what we are doing in terms of end-to-end and our vision about opening up the economic opportunities, they dovetail. So we have the vision, we have the mission, and that's how we execute it. The opportunity is massive in sports, but you cannot tackle it piecemeal. You can't.
Okay, that's interesting. I can see that Mr. Omar Tayari has been been supporting in terms of helping answer that question. And he says you could also be a doctor, a lawyer, a scientist, etc. in sports as well. And
actually,
I think these are some of the opportunities.
Yes.
Okay.
So just for disclaimer purposes, Omar Tayari, Dr. Omar Tayari, is a medical doctor qualified in Kenya. He did his master's in sports and exercise medicine in the UK. He was a doctor for Notts County FC. He even trained the England rugby team to the World Cup. So this is a kind of guy, if anyone in the audience is a doctor and is looking for something to do, she'll actually talk to. Sorry, back to you, Mike.
Wow. I think that I think that's actually another good facilitator for our next HiFL Master Series. Maybe we could just send him an invitation right away.
I'm sure he's had you.
Yes, just listening to what you do at ITB. I think people like me who have actually not known how to kick a ball also have a place in football, and I think I'm beginning to see opportunities. I could be a presenter, I could be a commentator, and all. And I think ITB should be able to help me, support me, go places and all. So I think a lot of young people who are seeking guidance, particularly those who are sports and non-sports enthusiasts, would be able to seek support. Visit the ITB Strategies website, try to reach out and see what help you could be able to get. Just to also add, Mr. Nyangeri, a lot of clubs across Africa and even national teams, even in Europe, do not invest a lot in data and data analytics. Like we've seen the clubs and the national teams in Europe do. And would you really say this has been one of the things that affected the impact we have in terms of our outings in football, sports generally? And then, of course, talking about big data in football and combining data sources, there's this issue around variability and then credibility of data. Just like you gave the example, there's too much data flying around, and so could you, by virtue of your experience and or be able to recommend to us where to go for the right form of data, if it's the right course for a match? Because I've actually run into a situation where I actually visited a website to look for scores for a match, and I actually got the wrong scores for a live match. And at the end of the game, I was actually in an argument with a friend, and I was like, no, but they won by 2 goals. So what are you saying? And, I had to go back and discover that I didn't watch the game and I actually got the wrong data because I went to the wrong site. So what were your recommendations be?
Thank you. Sorry for the wrong data. I hope nothing weird happened. I hope you'd not done a bet and lost your house.
No. Okay. No, nothing happened. I just got spanked for actually giving such a wrong information.
Now, your first question around data and lack of investment. So the thing is, let's do it on the other side to answer your question. You saw the example that I mentioned about the Germans putting in money for analytics against Brazil, and you saw the result. Many European clubs, European national teams are realizing that data is critical, and they're embracing more and more because they know they will get that extra 1%, just 1%, that makes the difference in a game. In Africa, sadly, we lag behind. We have pioneers who are going into this space. Within the presentation, I had a photo of a gentleman who's the manager for Al Ahly in Egypt, Mosimani. Yeah? He used to be the coach. Yes, he used to be the coach for Sundowns in South Africa. This is a guy who's at the forefront of using analytics, and you're seeing what he's doing. He made Sundowns a very solid team. The Egyptians loved him, so he became the first coach to actually move from South Africa to Egypt. Normally, what you see is managers from the Maghreb actually coming down into Sub-Saharan Africa, but this was reversed because this is a coach who's actually embraced data analytics. Now, how can this be addressed before I jump on the other issue of variability? National teams need to be serious. But then this is a discussion for government, and I don't want to go down that line. That's a minefield by itself. For the clubs, it's much easier. Clubs can decide, we're gonna deal with a sponsor. There are a number of sponsors here who sponsor HiFL. Nothing prevents, for example, your league from teaming up with a data company. I'm not advertising, but think, say you're doing Microsoft, for example. They have cloud solutions with analytics, with analytic capabilities. There's Amazon with analytic capabilities. You can ride on companies that actually do this for a living to help your own clubs, be it within the collegiate league or the Nigeria Football Federation League. And the same could apply to Kenya and the 52 other African countries that are not currently being served. Both national teams and clubs need to realize. You just need the realization. Once you realize data is critical, that changes everything for you. We've seen what Liverpool has done. I've seen the German team, even RB Leipzig. Leipzig changed in Europe just because of data. We are not going to see a Nigerian team, we are not going to see Ghanaian teams, for example, winning the African Champions League as long as they ignore data. Data ensures you have a player who is fit. You don't have a Marcelo in your squad who whenever he plays, you're losing, you know? So it's a long road, but we are starting. Now, in terms of variability and credibility of data, much like every other item that requires data in Africa, it's a struggle. But you guys are in university. Some of you work in mathematics, you're not working, you're students in mathematics departments or you statistics, actuarial, engineering. You're actually the source of this data, right? But to ensure the trustworthiness of data, you need two sources. So for example, Goodness could sit on one side of the stadium and watch, while Michael is seated on the other side watching the same game. And we go back to what a listener asked about, data points, right? So if you sit down and say, we're going to count the passes, we're going to count the yellow cards, that is the easiest way to start. Two guys seated independently, at the end you come together and say, how many red cards were in this game? How many passes were actually made? That's how you slowly start building credibility of data, right? There's a big company, a European company called Sportsradar. Sportsradar, all it does is acquire raw data. They acquire raw data from leagues all around the world. It could be in Nepal, Bhutan, Djibouti, Guatemala. That's all they do. But then with all this data, they put analytics and sell it to the betting companies. So when a betting company comes in and says, these are the odds, we think 2 point, whatever, those odds that they use is based on a lot of data that's been gathered by another entity. So what we need to do, and the challenge that I'll toss back to the students today, is can you create your own sports radar within Nigerian universities? That's how you tackle this issue. You don't want some random guy from Europe acting as your angel or savior to come, put data for you. I do not agree with that. Sorry, I've become emotional.
But it's absolutely necessary.
I've seen a post there from a gentleman at Kinisco. I think that's something you guys can do.
Yeah, so for their so really extend the hand of help in terms of that. Okay, just to round up now. Can you hear me, Mr. Nyangeri?
I can hear you. You had broken up, but now I can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay. Yes, just to round up now. We know that collegiate sports is an emerging area in Africa. And just like you said, there are lots of ways data gathering and analytics can actually help the platform to grow. But looking at HiFL, we know that HiFL is poised to carve a niche for itself in the way collegiate sports should be looked at and approached, not just in Nigeria, but even across Africa. What inputs can you bring from your experience as an expert in marketing, sports, and sports resources to bear on helping HiFL achieve this dream? Maybe you could respond to that and then probably give us your closing point on the show.
Okay, so thanks for that, Mike. As you know, we provide a ton of services as ITB. So for the league itself, creating visibility is important. Yes, you're doing, I know there's stuff with Super Sport going on. You've got Stanbic as a sponsor in the league. But there are options of pushing more. I don't know whether you're on OTT right now, which platforms you're using, whether there's any recorded data, recorded games that can be accessed on demand. But this is a discussion with Super Sport, it's copyright issues. But there are various aspects that you can actually explore. Imagine there's a great game. You had a game where, I don't know, the Tigers played the Warriors. It was a cracker of a game. It ended 7-7, right? But if you cannot access the game on demand, like replay it somewhere, you've lost some value. You cannot share it with someone, say, in Nigerian diaspora, in Dallas, you know? So there's a lot. My first sense will be more use of tech. More use of tech within the league. You raise the issue about data. Imagine a scenario where your data is so good, right? You know the number of touches, who was the best player in every match. Remember the Chukwueze case where we could see he was man of the match in certain games?
Yes, of
right?
course.
Yes, imagine you can create such information. You package it and then sell it to a third party. The third party will look at you as a source of all information, sport, everything, football for Nigerian young players, right? So once you get that reliability, it brings about better corporate partnerships, better sponsorships. So everything actually wins. It's all about the quality of data, better use of technology, and as a league as well, there needs to be some discipline. So a certain team misbehaves, you know, if there's chaos when one university is playing another, there should be certain actions that are taken to bring discipline. Just create order, make the league sweet. Make the league sweet enough to want people who are seated at home to say, you know what, I want to watch the derby this weekend on SuperSport rather than tuning to SuperSport 7 to watch Hull versus Huddersfield. You know, create that excitement.
Yeah, that would be interesting.
But this is something we can discuss more, and that's why I am very pleased to actually have participated here today. I'm working with the team at HiFL to see how we can actualize what you just asked me. But in short, thank you so much. I'd like to thank everyone who's watching from around the world for tuning in on this. Thank you for taking time. Thank you for your questions. You can see us on our website, itbstrategies.africa. Send us an email, reach out if there's the questions you had that were not answered here today. And if you just mention you are on this session, we will definitely get back to you ASAP. Football has a huge potential in Africa. Tie-ups such as this between East and West, I think this is the first time something as lovely as this has happened, opens up new opportunities, both for players on this side and players in Nigeria, as well as everyone else, every other stakeholder that is involved. I hope we can do more. Thank you so much, guys. And wear a mask and sanitize. Yes.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Nyangeri. It's been an exciting edition of the HiFL Masterclass series with you. You've been able to share a lot of knowledge and all, and we're really excited. For most of our participants who were not able to have their questions answered, of course, just like Mr. Nyangeri said, we will respond to those questions subsequently. Our subsequent Masterclass series would be holding, and you can join by visiting and registering for free at www.hiflng.com/masterclasses. we're going to be having other exciting facilitators do just as well as Mr. Nyangeri has done. He has set a very high standard today. I hope other facilitators will be able to do as good. So thank you so much. Our regards to all our people in Kenya and for the rest of the people who are joining across the world. We're really excited to have you. Thank you for joining today.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, everyone. Keep safe.
Thank you. Bye.